masses.
I've got swans on the brain at the moment because the beautiful pair in Brockwell Park have hatched some eggs recently, and watching their incubation has basically been the highlight of my quarantine. High on avian confidence, I'm ready to make an outlandish claim, Tim, an addition to the national surplus of unsubstantiated opinion.
Oh boy.
Swans have inspired the best classical music of any animal.
Ooh, that is a good one, actually.
Yeah, Saint-Saëns the Swan, Tchaikovsky, Orlando Gibbons' The Silver Swan, Karl Orff's Swan Flambé from Carmina Burana. Considering they sound like this in real life, that's quite good going.
But Sam, you've missed off Swan number 1, Sibelius' Symphony number 5, written between 1915 and 19 as a commission by the Finnish government to celebrate his own birthday.
You're absolutely right, Tim. Sib 5 is the supreme Cygnus symphony, and this week's analysis aim is to work out why it's such a banger. This music makes me feel like I'm 9 feet tall and ready to conquer the sun. It fills my ego with such confidence and certainty I could behave in a really arrogant way.
Patience, and I shook hands with everybody. You'll be pleased to know.
But why, Tim? That's what I want to get to the bottom of today. In his diary from this period, Sibelius described the start of the symphony using the very sweet word riverlets.
It's kind of like Piglets, but for rivers, then.
He saw them building in momentum and joining together in an ever-increasing flow. Listen to how the horn, then the woodwind, build up that rushing tide of water pigs. The musical idea, the motif, is in a constant state of development, of becoming more and more itself, going from riverlet piglet to a full river pig. On its journey, it is gaining in length, momentum, and character.
Yeah, like any good pig river.
By the grand moment of arrival in the fourth movement, the music is fully developed and extended from an initial signet to a fully realised organicist metaphor, be that a swan, river, or pig.
But actually, it's not a strict organic metaphor, is it?
Well observed, Tim. There's so much repetition in this piece that it sort of confuses the direct development idea. If you're into musicologist James Hepikowski...
Yeah, well, who isn't, right?
He's a very clever guy who invents multisyllable words to make the clever thing he's thought of seem even cleverer. You might call it rotational form. The melody goes round and round, but with ever-increasing intensity. Imagine if someone ran by your house and glanced in the window. Now imagine if they ran by it repeatedly, on a loop, over and over again, glancing in every time.
That would certainly gain in intensity.
Yeah, until you eventually call the police.
Through repetition, Sibelius builds momentum, developing the motive, but also an intensity that is released on the arrival of the pigs/police.
Exactly. And as we've said before, goal-orientated music is teleological and tends to have the effect on the audience of making them feel more themselves by the moment of arrival than they were at the beginning. It's an illusion of progress and self-actualization.
It's kind of like an ego boost.
Quite. And speaking of ego, there's a good case that Sibelius was a total egomaniac. In his diary, the composer described arriving into heaven and hearing God's own orchestra playing Sibelius' Fifth Symphony.
And possibly a bit of a narcissist, then.
Yes, but a narcissist naturist. That is the one that isn't naked, right? The Jolly Swan bit in the fourth movement really is about swans. In his diary, he described being struck by seeing 16 swans flying overhead when he was out for a walk. There are loads of reasons it feels spectacular and massive at that moment. The orchestration, for one, but perhaps the sneakiest is to do with augmentation.
Making something bigger.
Exactly. As this tune is happening... The bass is playing this.
It's the same!
The exact same tune at 1/3 of the speed. That tune really feels like it sits on the shoulders of giants.
Which, of course, leads to the inevitable question, do swans have shoulders?
Inevitable.
Inevitable.
The final rotation of the wheel has been reached. We get a subtle hint of this as the music is the same backwards as forwards. It's got nowhere left to go. It's a palindrome.
Inevitable.
Elbertonaveni. Inevitable isn't the first thing most people think when they hear the ending, though. Just as the swans feel like they're in full flight, the piece suddenly and dramatically ends with a succession of strong, isolated chords. It's a real Black Swan moment. No one predicts it. The events never seemed plausible, but it was always possible. Much like the discovery of black swans.
Or vegan sausage rolls?
Similar. No one sees it coming, but in a way, it seems inevitable. The journey is complete, so the piece just ends. Sibelius feels Hollywood because the story ends with the climactic point. A blockbuster doesn't hang around to see the paperwork get filled out afterwards. The Fifth and Hollywood are the edited, highlights reel, glossy, photoshopped, studiously revised for 4 years in Helsinki until there are no spare notes versions of life. They are the Swan, apparently effortlessly gliding along the surface. We never see that hard work, the feet pedalling underneath to remove stray viola harmonies. Whereas real life is usually conducted in shades of grey, this symphony, like Swans, comes in clear black or white, with a sureness of purpose, arrival and end. That's why we feel great listening to it. We get some certainty. Sibelius 5 is a fantasy, where all the decisions are clear, inevitable and final. We begin, make our struggle against the tundra, and then arrive. No faff. At the end, it just ends.